Hello and welcome to assetyogi.com. This is Mukul and in this video we will discuss about breaking a lease. I will not only explain about the possible repercussions of breaking a lease early, but also give you tips on how to break a lease the right way. So make sure that you watch the whole video and not miss on these helpful tips. Let's get started now.
As a landlord or as a tenant, you can break the lease early before the lease period ends, but you should comply with the lease terms if you have to do it the right way. Otherwise, you can end up in legal troubles. So let us first understand the lease terms and then we will see why a landlord or tenant may want to break the lease early, and then we will see what is the right way of doing that. So in a standard lease, the typical lease period is 11 months to 1 year, at least in India, and I think elsewhere also it will be more or less the same. Then notice period is 30 days to 90 days. Now the landlord may insist on a longer notice period, for example 90 days or 60 days, to ensure a long-term commitment from tenant. But sometimes a landlord may also ask for locking period of, let's say, 6 months, and if the tenant leaves before 6 months, then he has to pay the complete rent of 6 months. Then the tenant has to deposit 2 to 3 months of rent as a security deposit, and it acts as a contingency fund in case of any rent defaults by the tenant or any damage to the property by the tenant. Then the lease agreement also contains clauses related to rent payment default. Suppose the tenant doesn't pay for 2 continuous months, then the landlord can ask the tenant to vacate the property immediately. Then major maintenance are actually responsibility of landlord, which includes any repairs and maintenance of fixed structures like walls, ceilings, doors, windows, electrical, plumbing and sanitary fixtures which are not damaged due to tenant's negligence. Then minor and day-to-day maintenance are responsibility of the tenant, which can include cleaning and maintenance of fixtures and appliances. Then the tenant has to ensure the peaceful conduct and he should not create any nuisance in the neighborhood community. Then from the landlord side, there should not be any privacy infringement and he has to ensure quiet enjoyment of the property to the tenant. Then tenant cannot sublet the residential property. Generally in a residential contract, the tenant is not allowed to sublet without written consent from the landlord. Then he cannot operate any business in a residential property. The tenant cannot handle any business operations. So these are the standard lease terms which are part of the rent agreement between landlord and tenant. Now let us understand why a landlord or tenant may want to break the lease early and how they can go about it legally. So a tenant may want to break a lease because he is relocating due to a job change to a new city or state, or he is probably moving due to family reasons, or the tenant may have gone out of business, or his company has gone out of business and he has no money to pay, or suppose the house is in poor condition, suppose there is seepage in the house, or there are insect infestations, or let's say a landlord has not provided basic facilities as per the contract, and suppose there are intrusions from the landlord and he is not allowing the quiet enjoyment of the property as per the contract to the tenant, and the landlord obviously cannot lock out the tenant, he cannot change the locks. So if he is doing that, then obviously tenant has all the right to break the lease early, and landlord also cannot harass the tenant. So if there is a case of harassment, physical or mental, any kind of harassment, then again tenant has all the right to break the lease early. So these are some of the reasons why a tenant may want to break the lease early. Now let us look at some reasons why a landlord may want to break the lease early before the lease period ends. So a non-payment of rent is obviously one reason. We have already seen in the lease terms, suppose the tenant has not paid rent for 2 months, then landlord can definitely ask to vacate the property. And suppose the tenant is causing a nuisance in the neighborhood community, then definitely landlord can again ask to vacate the property. And subletting is definitely not allowed as per the rent agreement. and the tenant cannot conduct any business in the property. So if he's doing subletting or business in the property, then landlord can definitely break the lease early. And if there is a property damage and poor maintenance by the tenant, then again landlord can ask the tenant to vacate the property immediately. So if you have a genuine reason to break the lease before the lease period ends, then you can definitely discuss it with the other party, and let's see how to do it properly. So let us see, if a tenant wants to terminate the lease before the lease period ends, then what is the right procedure? So first step is obviously mutual agreement. He can discuss it with the landlord. As a tenant, you should explain the complete situation to the landlord if you are changing the job, or if there are any personal reasons, or if you are not liking the house or the maintenance of the house. So landlord may provide a resolution if it is related to the house. Otherwise, if it is your personal reason or a job change, then you can definitely break the lease as per the contract, and you have to settle the case. So in the settlement procedure, you have to basically settle these three things: notice period, rent payments, and security deposit. Suppose you have a notice period of 30 days, then you have a choice: either you can serve the notice period, or you can buy out the notice period. You can pay 1 month rent extra to the landlord. Or let's say if you have a 60-day or a 90-day notice period, then you can probably negotiate with the landlord. You can probably ask him to, let's say, negotiate a 30-day notice, and you can partly pay plus 1 month rent, or you can completely buy out the notice period by paying 1 or 2 or 3 months rent depending on your notice period. So you have to negotiate that, and basically you can adjust your rent payments against the security deposit also. And whatever is the agreement between the landlord and the tenant, you should have a clear communication in the form of email or a written letter. So don't just rely on the oral commitment. Now suppose if you are the landlord, then let us see what is the right procedure of terminating the lease early. So if you are the landlord, then again mutual agreement is the best way out. So as a landlord, you should first explain the situation to the tenant. If he has breached any term, if he has not paid the rent on time, or if he has breached any other contract term, so breach of contract. For example, if he has created some nuisance in the neighborhood, or if he has troubled some neighbors. So you have to explain it clearly in the form of a written email or a written letter. And in case of rent default, the tenant may offer to settle the account, or if you want, you can definitely ask to vacate the property. And if you are asking to vacate the property, then you have to give a written notice to the tenant as per the lease term. Now how do you settle? Basically you have to settle on these 3 or 4 parameters. So you have to give notice period as per the lease terms. If it is a 30-day notice period, or 60 days or 90 days notice period, you have to give sufficient notice to the tenant to vacate the property. And if the tenant has defaulted on rent payment, if he has not paid for 2 months rent default, then you can definitely ask to vacate the property immediately. And if the tenant has damaged the property, then you can definitely adjust it against the security deposit. Then after your oral discussion with the tenant, you should have clear communication in the form of email or a written letter. Again, you should not leave it to the oral discussion only. Generally, most of the times, lease can be easily terminated by mutual agreement. If, however, landlord and tenant are not agreeing on certain terms, then legal recourse can be sought in court of law. So how do you approach legally? So first of all, you should have all the agreements and communication in writing. Then you should keep all the documents safely as evidence, and you can take a real estate advocate or a lawyer's advice, and then file a case. And as I said earlier, most of the cases can be solved by mutual agreement. Definitely you can approach the courts, but that can be a longer process, and a lot of hassles will be there. So I would say that your best bet is mutual agreement with the other party. If you are a landlord, then you should clearly communicate with the tenant, and if you are a tenant, then you should explain your situation to the landlord. So whether you are a landlord or a tenant, I hope that after watching this video, you now understand how to terminate the lease early the right way.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up below. If you want a particular real estate and investing topic to be covered, please leave a comment. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel to get latest real estate and investing tips straight to your inbox. Don't wait, please subscribe. You really don't want to miss out on our latest informative videos just like this. See you guys in next video.